Welcome to Extremely Valid Points.
We're three business owners and friends who enjoy talking about business, marketing, and creativity.
Along the way, we just might happen to make some extremely valid points.
So we'd love it if you would join us in today's conversation. Welcome to another episode of Extremely Valid Points. I'm your co-host, Jenny Sala.
And I'm Nathan Sala.
And I'm Dave Wilkins.
Welcome.
Welcome, guys. Today we have a special guest, Alisa Manjarrez. And Alisa is a vision producer and founder of the Happy Cactus, where powerful women gain clarity to cast a vision, create a strategy, and make it happen. Alisa also produces and hosts Color Forward, a podcast dedicated to advancing multicultural women in the workplace. And she also hosts another podcast called Seriously Though, a podcast for modern professionals looking to create the life of their dreams and the wealth to go with it. Thank you for joining us today, Alisa.
Thank you for having me. I love the name of your podcast, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I feel like it
was one of those
it's
accidental
something you can
things.
say all the time. Oh, those are extremely valid points.
That was Nathan's brainchild, really. So
yeah, we were just talking about it. You know, after we talked to you and you guys consulted us and told us how to have a podcast, we were like, you know, our style, let's just talk, and then that's just our style. We just kind of come up with these extremely valid points, and that's just how we roll. And probably not exactly true, but we're like, oh, I like the name.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, so a little backstory. We were, in thinking about starting off this podcast, we did talk to Alisa and her brother Michael because they have the Seriously Though podcast, which you should definitely check out. And Alisa has even other podcasts I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit more about. But we were so impressed. We wanted to find out a little bit how they do what they do, what things to do, what things not to do. And so they were very helpful in getting us launched here.
Very
so thank you for that.
I have a lot of not to do's, what not to do's. I feel like.
Yeah, we've been learning some of those ourselves too.
Yeah.
Well, great. So I wonder, Alisa, if you would just kind of give us a little bit of your backstory and kind of how you got to where you are now, and just your entrepreneurial journey, if you would.
Yeah, you know, I never really set out to be an entrepreneur. I think I've always been one at heart. And I just recently started to see the entrepreneurship side of me in the last year, because I noticed that in every job I had, I created my position or they created it for me. And one of my first jobs, I was working for a church construction company. And I was a fashion merchandising major turned communications major. And my parents were like, what are you doing working for a construction company? And that's actually how I met Dave.
True.
And that's how I got into marketing and branding. I knew I wanted to work with executives, and I walked up to this man at church. And I just told this story earlier this morning. He always wore nice suits. And I was like, I just graduated from college, and I was like, I should work for him because he must know something. Those suits are nice. So I said, hey, I want to work for you. You should hire me. I had no idea what he did. And then the more we talked, I said, oh, I want to work with executives. I want to do executive coaching. I'm not there yet. And he said, what if you worked with pastors? They're like executives. They have teams. And he said, I'm a construction company. They were doing Sonic Burgers and all these other restaurant buildings. And then they decided to do churches. And so I started working with these churches and asking them what their visions for their buildings were. And I worked with architects and engineers. They're very fancy engineers.
Yeah, French engineers, or
They're the entrepreneurial kind of engineers.
yeah. So there you go. Oh, there you go.
Yes. And then I just started, and then I said, our logo is really bad. We don't have any marketing materials for these churches. We need video. We need all these things. And so and then I said, and we could also make another stream of income just consulting with these pastors too. So obviously my boss liked that, oh, you can make us more money, make us look good.
Oh, yeah.
Sign me up.
Extremely valuable.
Yeah. And I had never really, I liked marketing. I did some PR internships, but I never really knew how much I liked the branding and telling stories and all of that until I started working with this company and they gave me a lot of freedom. And then from there, I started creating other positions I worked for a food blog. I worked for an advertising agency. I worked for, and every single job they would say, this is what you need to do. And I would say, well, this is what I can do. And it was always more, and it always made them money. And so now here we are 15 years later. And I'm like, oh, what if I just do it for myself?
Yeah,
Nice.
that's great. So do you like that shift?
Well, it took me getting let go from my job. I was working in corporate marketing and I thought, I guess this is the time. So I'm happy with the shift. It definitely has ups and downs, lots of waves of confidence and failure, all that. And I'm just at the beginning of my own journey.
That sounds very normal, I think, for anybody who's on the entrepreneurial journey. Yeah. And what I kind of hear you saying when you're talking about, like, I think you have always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think an entrepreneur is somebody who can find a problem or find a solution, find a better way to do things. And also, you make money at the same time that you're solving other people's problems. Yeah. I just think they're problem solvers, and they think differently.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are you doing now?
So now I took that 15-year past of vision casting and I'm calling myself a vision producer because I realized that's what I was doing. I was asking people what their visions were and then making them happen.
So did you kind of coin that term?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's really good.
I love that. Vision producer. So it's like visionary, and then the producer, is that like a movie producer type of aspect of?
It's kind of, I did a little bit of research. I was like, what is an executive producer? Like, what does that even mean? And it's actually more closely to what I do than anything, because I don't actually produce the work, but I can bring the people together to produce the work.
Nice.
It's the executive producer without the money. You pay me.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because a lot of times people, they have an idea, they're sort of seeing that future, but they don't know how to bring it into reality, who to contact, how to bring all the different pieces of the puzzle together, right?
Yeah, my training is in executive coaching, and I knew I didn't. That is where for coaching, you're coaching for insight, and they ask a question and you ask a question back.
Okay.
You're not really giving any answers. You're letting them get to that point where they're like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And you're just kind of there holding space for them. Mm-hmm. And so I do that. And then I'm like, okay, now let's do something about it.
That's good. So there's accountability and that kind of thing as a part of that as well.
Yes.
Cool.
So what's your process and how do you go about helping people narrow down their vision? Because the people you work with probably, if they're anything like us, the vision can either be too focused or too grand. What's your process in helping people?
I would say there's two types of people. The most popular person, I guess you could say, that I help are the people with a ton of ideas and they're like, we don't know what to do with them. And I call it like, I say it's kind of like your brain is spaghetti and everything is intertwined. And so I'm just helping you one noodle at a time. And how I do that is through a couple of different methods. I have in person, I'll get huge white sheets of sticky paper, like big giant notepads, and write out all their ideas and just do a complete brain dump and sort through it all. And for them, it's really powerful because they're like, oh my gosh, like I see how this connects, or I see that has nothing to do with what I actually want.
Oh, yeah.
And so just helping them see what's in their head is outside of because you all know when you're in your brain, it's like very confusing.
You're almost too close to it to be able to have that perspective.
And I need that for myself. I get in my own head all the time and I And then as soon as I write it down or look at it or talk to someone, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that hard after all.
It reminds me, there's a quote by Steve Jobs. He said, creativity is connecting the dots. And then we had a podcast last week where we talked about how strategy is just knowing which dots to connect. And it sounds like when you're kind of doing that brain dump thing, you're doing this like strategic, creative process to help people.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I had a client the other day say, well, I want to offer, she's a diversity and inclusion strategist and speaker and professor, all these things. And she said, I'm doing these webinars. I want to teach workshops. I want to do speaking. I still want to do teaching. I want to charge for this. I don't want to charge for that. And in that hour, I said, oh, okay. So here are your marketing channels. You said you don't want to charge for webinars. There's one. You want to start a podcast. There's your other. But you want to charge for speaking. So there's your money. And she was like, oh, I never saw it that way. I just knew I wanted to do all these things. And when you said marketing channels, she's like, now when I do my webinars, I need to start thinking about my webinars as a marketing vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
And people need to know how to contact me if that's my marketing vehicle or channel.
Nice.
Very cool.
Well, speaking of marketing, what kinds of things have you been doing in your career now, being a vision producer? How do you market yourself, and how did you kind of get into that?
I would say probably the key to marketing is consistency. And that is the thing I lack the most.
Yes.
So I have a couple of podcasts that I do, and I talk about myself a little bit. I probably don't do it a lot on the Seriously Though podcast. It's more about showing value and talking about what I enjoy in my social media. So I guess if you look at all my marketing channels, it's podcasting, social media, usually more Instagram than anything else, a little bit of LinkedIn. I have a website with a contact form, and I get a contact up like super cold lead probably once or twice every quarter. So it's not this consistent thing, but it happens every once in a while. And then I have a newsletter that goes out monthly. And it's really interesting because since I'm starting out, most of my quote unquote fans are not necessarily my potential clients or ideal clients. So almost everything I'm doing, I would really consider more just brand awareness at this stage of the game.
Yeah. Do you feel like that having those channels out there, those platforms, kind of just lends validity to what you're doing or anything like that?
I think it helps people see something that I've always been intentional about is sharing what I'm working on or what I'm doing. Yeah. Even when I had a full-time job, I've been doing executive coaching on the side. So I think just people know without really understanding what I do, they know that I'm up to something and they know that I'm creating a lot. And the people that come to me say, what are you doing? And then when I explain it, they either decide they need it, they will need it, or they know someone who needs it.
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
That's great.
When I was doing coaching on the side, everything was word of mouth. So I've gotten really good at building up those word of mouth types of referrals. And that's how I've gotten I can pay the bills today because of that word of mouth. And I've realized that for me, I just went in January, I just switched my business model. So the majority of my clients are year-long contracts. And those take a lot of trust. If you're putting your vision in someone's hand for a whole year, I did it for 6 months and it was too short. We were just barely getting started. But in order for someone to trust me with their baby, whether it's a new company, a podcast, whatever their vision is, something new that they're starting, it takes 1 to 2 years of me building that rapport with them. So I'm in it for the long game.
Very cool.
That's good. And I think it's good to create those expectations too, because often I think if we want to hire a coach, we think they're going to make this happen faster than I could make it happen. Often we're really the ones that are in our own way, though, right? Like we are not doing the things we should be doing, or maybe we get distracted by other big grand ideas, all those kinds of things. But really, how long do you think it takes with most of your clients? What expectation do you want to create for them when they start working with you about how long it's going to take for them to like really see results that they want to see?
I think you make a good point that it depends on you. So I have a client that I've been working with. I have one client that I've been working with for 2 years, and she's just barely getting started. I have another that I've been working with 2 years. She has her first book coming out. She has courses. She has a membership. I mean, she has everything. She has a team behind her, and she's very go, go, go. I throw an idea at her and she does it like the next day.
Wow.
This other client, she's like, she wants to follow a template and she has a cadence, and her business is going to be amazing. It just is a different process for her.
Sure. Yeah. And personalities are a big factor in that too, right? Some people are more cautious. Some people are just jump right in and figure it out as they go. And neither of those are wrong or right. It's just the way people are, right?
Exactly.
Do you like having that variety with different personalities and different types, where having to, maybe give different advice and different ideas to people depending on, you got, I'm sure, different careers, different, and like I said, different personalities. Is that a fun challenge for you?
I learned so much from each of those different personalities. And to be honest, I'm still learning which personalities I like to work with. And I know that with the people that I like, they've been successful in some area of their life before, and they're ready for the next thing. So I know that, like the one that's taken 2 years and she's just barely getting started. She had a career in philanthropy for 20 years where she was raising millions and millions of dollars. And now she's a philanthropist consultant, and she'll be good. I have full confidence. She's already been so successful. She'll be successful in this way. And honestly, with her, because she moves so slow, for lack of better terms, I've learned so much from her because I'm very fast. Like, let's do this. Let's get started. Let's go. And she's like, well, let's think about this. She has a whole binder for her life with her mission statement and her vision statement and all these things. And with my clients, the fast ones, we can come up with your purpose, mission, vision in like 40 minutes. If you're willing, we can get it done.
Yeah.
So for her, it's good. It helps me slow down. And then these other fast moving ones, well, we're just like a roller coaster, and it's a blast.
So who is your ideal target client? And I had another question, but I forgot that one. So I'll just go with that one.
I would say ambitious women who are wanting to be more influential in their lives, whether that's also creating a public persona or creating something that's going to create impact.
Okay.
People that want to change the world.
You're speaking our language now.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say too, I was listening just to your the recent podcast you did on Seriously, though, where you talk about finding your spark, and you kind of talk some about the things we've talked about here. But I would just recommend that you listen to that. If you're listening to this, check out that episode as well. But tell us a little bit about the Happy Cactus and how that fits into what you're doing.
When I was first becoming an executive coach, I thought I needed to become an executive in order to help them. And I worked with a coach, and she said, okay, well, you're in marketing. Maybe you want to be a brand manager. Maybe you want to be a CMO. Why don't you do some research of the path that it took to get to those places and then come back to me? And then we can map out a plan, which is a very typical thing that a coach does. So let's figure out what the steps are and do them. I came back to her and I said, I don't want any of that. I looked up a bunch of careers. I don't want any of them. And so she said, well, let's see what you've been doing. And I told her about the church, the church construction company, the food blog, all these things. And she said, you really create your own path. And the reason why you don't like those preordained paths is because you're that's not you. It fits some people, but it doesn't fit you. So what's something that will help you remember this? Because you seem to fall into this pattern, and I still fall into this pattern, by the way, of like getting stuck. And if you know that when you're stuck, you're supposed to create something new, what's going to help you? And so I said, well, I have this cactus in my backyard, and they call it a bunny ear cactus or a Mickey Mouse cactus. And it's a cute little ball with two ears coming out of it. And I said, I have this bunny ear cactus, and I started to see it growing weird ears here and there, and it was looking kind of ugly. And I was not happy with this cactus because I wanted it to be cute and perfect. And I was looking at my patio one day and I said, you know what? That cactus is so happy. Like, it's growing the way it wants. It's in the sun. It has no idea that it's supposed to be a bunny ears. It's supposed to have just two. It has no idea, and it's fine. And so this happy cactus is what I'm going to use as my reminder that I can create and grow however, whenever I want.
Love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and I got stuck again a couple of years ago, and I worked with another I was bored at my corporate job, not sure. I was trying to create another position for myself there, and it wasn't working. I kept hitting a wall. And when I worked with this other coach, he said, Alisa, who are you? And I said, I'm the happy cactus. And he was like, what? So I told him the whole story.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
And it brought me back. So the happy cactus brought me back to knowing that I can create whatever I want.
So do you find when you're working with people that there's a lot of working through the thought that the mentality of like, well, I need to follow this path, or I'm looking at someone else and I see what they've done and I want to try to follow that, but then you have to guide them to say, no, you need to be more of who you are?
All the time. I mean, that is my methodology for my social media strategy. There are a lot of strategies. Sometimes I'll use some because I think strategy is very important, and I create strategies for people. But sometimes you have to step out of that in order to see what works for you. And so I do have people that are like, but I'm supposed to follow these 4 steps.
Yeah.
And I can give an example. This January, I had my Instagram account, which is still fairly new. And I was like, I don't really want to do captions. I don't want to post. My theme was, I'm just going to do it January. And I said, I just want to talk to people. So I'm only going to do Instagram lives and talk to people about whatever I want, not even my business. I'm just going to talk to them. And it turned into this whole series of Just Do It January. And I learned about how people just do it, just like get over those humps. And so it was really fun. I made new friends. I got more followers, and it was kind of crazy how just being myself worked.
Nice.
Yeah, just putting that energy out there, I think maybe is more important than trying to analyze it all too specifically, I suppose.
Yeah, and when we talk to companies about branding and storytelling, that's the coaching lesson to learn is don't try to be who you're not. You have to be authentic. You have to be who you are and not who you're not.
Right. And you have to know who you are. And often I think we think this is how I should be. I'm trying to be how I should be. And we have these ideals based on comparisons of other people and things like that make us think that we're not good enough now. We're trying to become something else. But I love your story about Instagram, and And I love the really happy ending that you had in it. And I think for most people, something like that would feel risky, like breaking out of the mold, going off plan or off, strategy, sort of. Like, how do you get to that place where you can just take that risk? And did you think at all about this might fail? And, what were your thoughts about that?
I think taking risks takes practice, and it's a muscle that you build. And the more risks you take, you can see what works, because it doesn't always work, that's for sure. But I heard this phrase the other day, and it says, confidence is something you build after the fact. And so I've built confidence in my risk taking after taking risks.
That's good.
So when I did that Instagram trial, honestly, it wasn't a big risk for me because I didn't care that I had that mentality. But I think it's because I've taken other risks in the past, and I've risked being myself over and over. And the more myself I am, the less risky it ends up becoming, because it just feels natural.
Nice.
Well, earlier, Jenny gave her definition of an entrepreneur. And it made me think of the other definitions I've heard of being an entrepreneur. And one of them is risk taker. But an entrepreneur is generally, well, it's not really a definition, but it's, and I'm putting a theory together, because you keep saying that you get stuck. And it keeps reminding me of what I thought about when Jenny said that is an entrepreneur, all the entrepreneurs I've ever known, their personality is like tremendous energy to start something, tremendous explosive energy to get something going and the creation of something. And then, I'm bored. I want to move on.
Yep.
So I'm curious if that's when you get stuck, is if it's just time to re-entrepreneur.
Yeah. I'm exploring that too, because I had this ideal client come to me last week.
Nice.
And I said, and in the session, at the end of the session, I said, I'm not sure how I want to work with you. So let's do another session. It was just like a free session. And I thought about it, and I was like, I've already done that, and I'm kind of bored now. I'm already bored. And so I went to a fellow coach, and it was really good, because I obviously don't want to lose the client just because I'm bored, but she gave me some other approaches that I could take with this client. And she said, what if you do it? What if she's not one of your long-term, year-long clients? What if she just needs a kickstart? And how about you create a strategy day for her and do these other things? And I was like, oh, that's fun. Like, now I'm excited again. And so now when I go and offer this to her, I'm going to have all that fun, excited energy. And she has no idea that I was bored. I'm not going to tell her to listen to this podcast.
Could be anybody. Anyway.
So I think it comes back to creation. Like, if you're bored, take it as a sign. Don't keep doing it, because people will feel it. And if we're talking about being yourself, then you can it's a chance, especially for creatives, it's a chance to get more creative.
It's good.
So do you have any tips out there for business people, for creative people, something that you can kind of just give, that as they're either starting this process or maybe they're stuck at a point, what would you give them a tip?
So my loosey-goosey tip is show up. Just show up. And, that can mean so many things to a lot of people, but showing up in conversations in your network with your friends and family. My cousins just barely figured out what the heck I do. Partly because of our Seriously Though podcast, and I talk about it a little bit. And they've known me my entire lives. And then they just one day started asking me, and I gave them a sample coaching session. Oh. I had all my cousins, this is just like 2 months ago, all my cousins at the table. And I said, and then of course, all of them were like, I could do that. Yeah. But I think that was a way for me to show up to people who, obviously I'm not trying to sell to them, but I'm showing more of myself to more people. And I think that is a muscle that is really important to build. Even if you think people don't care, you can find ways to connect the dots. Like, none of them are executives. They don't need an executive coach. They don't have any big visions, but it was really important for them to understand me and me to show myself to them. And so I think showing up can create a lot of magic for yourself. And then I'll give you another one,
Yeah.
A more tactical way of showing up. Make sure people know how to find you and contact you. So if that means having a landing page with an email sign up, or having a social media presence or a podcast, make ways for people to find you. People look in so many different places. So show up.
I think those are two really good points that I need to pay attention to because, so often my mentality, that voice that's in my head is one, like, oh, people already know or understand, what I do. Or sometimes I'm often surprised when I'm talking to someone about what I do or how I do the things that I do. I take for granted, I do it every day, and I would think that that's commonplace. But then when a lot of times, if I'm mentoring somebody or, investing in someone else, I think, oh, well, of course we do it like this. And then they're kind of like, oh, I had no clue that's how you did a video project. And so, just realizing that, okay, this is having those conversations can be really fruitful. And even though all the things that I take for granted, there is new to someone else. And then also, I'm always conscious about like, well, I don't want to talk about myself too much, but a lot of times you can put yourself out there. And I think you're a great example, like just that just do it. You're including people in a conversation. It's not all about you, but you're putting yourself out there and allowing people to have contact with you. Not forcing yourself, but you're there. And if you don't start that conversation, no one's going to have it.
Exactly.
And Dave, listening to you talk, I reminded so often we think we don't realize how valuable our insights can be to other people and how much we can add value to people. And I think we underestimate what we have to give and what we have to offer to people. And creating space to do that, to share yourself, to share your ideas, to share your knowledge, can really help people and help them to feel connected with you. And then it creates these opportunities, right, for to be shared. Maybe you have a friend who listens to your podcast all the time, then it makes them think of their friend because, oh, they need to hear this. And next thing you know, now, you have a new client. And so just continuing to show up for people will create space for those types of things to happen.
Yeah, I think that a part, like the second piece to showing up would be to serve others. And so if you can show up and serve them powerfully, that's something that we say a lot in the coaching world, but I think it really applies to any kind of business because every business has something to offer. So how can you offer this to the best of your capabilities? And even if it's a 10-minute conversation, it could serve them powerfully.
It's great. Yeah. We talk about that a lot too, don't we? Adding value, serving people. That's what it's all about. It's what makes our job worth it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the last things we'd like to do at the kind of toward the end is to talk about inspiration. So I don't know if you have something that has inspired you recently that you'd like to share with everybody.
It really goes in the with the theme of showing up and strategy. I've been watching The Circle on Netflix. Have any of you seen it?
Not yet, but
is that the movie or that's a show?
No, it's a reality social media competition.
Okay.
And they put 8 people in these little apartments and they can't see each other. They create a social media profile. And then whoever is like the biggest influencer wins $100,000. And so you have some people that come in as themselves and some people who come in as catfishes. So in this last season, someone came in as Lance Bass from NSYNC and no one was sure if it was really him or if it wasn't. And it's all about how you portray yourself to other people. And you build relationships, and some of the relationships you build strategically and some you build just because you like the other person. And I was watching it with one of my friends who's an artist, and she was like, we should take some cues from this, because there are ways that you can show up for people to really understand who you are. And if you don't make yourself known, in this case, you don't win. You don't win the prize.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a fun social psychological experiment that they put on television, and it's kind of funny. So I think it's a little addicting, but it's called The Circle on Netflix.
On Netflix,
Nice.
okay, yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes, and as well as some links to your podcasts. Alisa, tell us how people can get in touch with you and how they can connect with you if they want to work with you or listen to your podcast, all those things.
So if you want all of me, you can find me on Instagram at alisa.coach. It's ALISA.coach. But I have a Happy Cactus Instagram. That's the Happy Cactus Club. And then my brother and I have a podcast, which is Seriously Though Pod. And then I would say start there, and then you can find all my other things.
That's
Sounds
great.
awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We sure appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to be talking to your brother, Michael, at some point here as well. But thanks for sharing all the things that you do and your process. And we wish you the best of luck with all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much for having me on Extremely Valid Points.
Hey, we're gonna make a little
There's a clip.
a teaser with that, right?
That's our new jingle.
Yeah. All right,
It's
everyone.
been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us at the Extremely Valid Points podcast. To learn more about this episode, see our show notes at extremelyvalidpoints.com. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you download your podcasts. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/extremelyvalid. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram at EVP_podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time with some extremely valid points.